The real game isn't played in the world, it's played in your head. Every decision, every hesitation, every success begins in the space between your thoughts. Most people are prisoners of their own programming, running mental codes written by fear, repetition, and doubt. But what happens when you learn to rewrite the system? When you stop reacting to life and start designing it from the inside out, that's when the rules change. Your brain is the most powerful tool you own, but it was never meant to run on autopilot. It learns whatever you feed it, your excuses, your goals, your self-talk. Every thought you repeat becomes instruction, and every instruction becomes reality. Once you understand that your mind doesn't just record the world but builds it, you stop being controlled by old patterns and start building new outcomes. This isn't about positive thinking or wishful motivation, it's about precision. It's about learning how to focus your mental energy like a laser instead of scattering it like sparks. The moment you take ownership of what runs through your head, life starts moving in the direction you actually want. You stop waiting for luck, opportunity, or timing because you've already hacked the source, your own mind. Once you master that, success stops being something you chase. It becomes something you attract. Your brain is not just an organ, it's a system. It processes, stores, calculates, and reacts faster than anything ever built. Yet most people never learn how to operate it. They go through life letting it run on default, following programs written by upbringing, society, and habit. You were never taught how to think, only what to think. But the real power begins when you stop being a user of your mind and start becoming its engineer. The mind has two primary functions: automation and creation. Automation runs your habits, patterns, and instincts. Creation builds ideas, vision, and growth. When you let automation dominate, your life becomes predictable. You repeat old experiences because the system keeps looping what it knows. But once you activate creation, you begin designing outcomes intentionally, not accidentally. That's when life starts shifting from random to strategic. Every system operates on input and output. What you feed your mind through thoughts, content, and language becomes the code it runs on. If you constantly feed it fear and distraction, it learns to seek comfort. Feed it clarity and purpose, and it starts generating solutions. Most people try to change results without changing their code, but no system runs better without rewriting its programming. Your thoughts are not random sparks, they're lines of mental code. Each repetition strengthens a neural path. Say something to yourself often enough, and your brain begins to treat it as fact. That's how belief is built, not through evidence, but through repetition. So when you start consciously programming your inner dialogue, you're not just thinking positively, you're literally rewriting your brain's operational system. The mind thrives on efficiency, not accuracy. It doesn't care if a belief is true. It only cares if it's familiar. That's why it repeats the same fears and doubts, even when they've been proven wrong. The system is lazy by design, it saves energy by running old code. To change your life, you must disrupt the system. You must make new thinking more familiar than old fear. That's how transformations stick. Understanding the mind as a system means realizing it responds to structure, not emotion. Emotion can activate you, but structure sustains you. When you give your mind a clear process, goals, focus, repetition, review, it begins to align naturally. But if you run it with inconsistency, it defaults to confusion. Precision and order are the language it understands best. Most people think they have mindset problems when they really have management problems. The mind isn't against you. It's just unled. A system without leadership will always fall back to chaos. Leadership of the mind means setting direction, enforcing focus, and maintaining consistency, even when you don't feel like it. That's the discipline that separates control from chaos. When you observe your thoughts instead of reacting to them, you move from being inside the system to operating it from the outside. Awareness gives you admin access to your brain. You stop being just a user of emotion and start managing its function. That shift in perspective from participant to programmer is where mastery begins. The mind always runs on feedback loops. What you focus on multiplies. If you feed your brain proof that you're capable, it searches for evidence to confirm it. If you feed it self-doubt, it will find reasons you can't succeed. That's how powerful attention is. It's the command line for your mental operating system. Focus determines function. The first step to mastering your mind is learning to separate noise from signal. Not every thought deserves your attention. Most are random echoes of your environment, media, people, memories. Awareness is your filter. Once you start identifying what's external and what's truly yours, the noise fades, and clarity begins to emerge. That's how you reclaim bandwidth from mental clutter. Every decision you make programs the next one. The mind learns through repetition what you reward. It repeats. Each time you choose discipline over distraction, you strengthen that pathway. Each time you give in to impulse, you reinforce the opposite. Training your brain is not about force, it's about consistent reinforcement. Every thought is a vote for the kind of system you want running your life. To run the mind effectively, you must understand its triggers. The system responds predictably to emotion, environment, and language. Learn your triggers, and you control the loop. The brain doesn't care about logic under stress. It listens to habit. By rehearsing composure before chaos, you reprogram how the system behaves under pressure. That's how you turn calm into a reflex. The mind runs best on clear commands. Vague goals confuse it. When you say, "I want to be successful," your brain has no clear instruction. But when you define success in precise detail, what, when, how, it starts building routes toward it. Systems love clarity. The more detailed the command, the faster the execution. Your environment is your mind's coding environment. The people you talk to, the spaces you occupy, and the information you consume all write instructions into your system. If your environment reinforces chaos, your brain learns chaos. But if it reinforces discipline, the mind stabilizes. Environment isn't background, it's data input. Protect it like your system's firewall. To run the mind, you must also learn to reboot it. Overthinking, exhaustion, and stress are just signs that your system needs rest. Stillness isn't laziness, it's maintenance. When you pause, reflect, or breathe, you're not wasting time, you're refreshing processing power. A clear mind runs faster, cleaner, and sharper than a busy one. A mind working properly doesn't chase control, it embodies it. It no longer reacts emotionally to every situation because it trusts its own design. That level of internal confidence comes from structure, not spontaneity. When your system runs efficiently, your decisions become smooth and your presence becomes magnetic. When you train your mind to work systematically, success stops feeling forced. You stop relying on motivation and start relying on mastery. Motivation fades when the emotion passes, but systems run regardless of feeling. That's how professionals outperform amateurs, not by intensity, but by structure. To master the mind is to become fluent in its language. You stop commanding it with fear and start leading it with logic. You begin aligning emotion with purpose instead of letting it pull you off track. The more you understand the patterns beneath your thoughts, the more predictable and controllable your outcomes become. Over time, you'll notice the difference between living in the system and leading it. The same problems that once overwhelmed you become simple decisions. You start anticipating mental traps before they appear. Life doesn't get easier. Your operating system gets stronger. That's when power turns quiet and confidence turns automatic. The mind that you once fought against becomes your most loyal ally. It plans, adapts, and sharpens your direction with minimal effort. You don't silence it, you synchronize with it. Because once you learn to run the system, you no longer have to force success, you simply times execute it. Asterisk. The machine doesn't resist anymore. It follows your command flawlessly, efficiently, and without hesitation. The limits you live with today aren't real, they're coded responses your mind accepted as truth. Every fear, hesitation, and self-doubt started as an idea someone repeated until it became a fact inside your head. The brain doesn't question what it hears enough times. It simply records it as reality. You're not broken, you're programmed. And what's been programmed can always be rewritten. Your mind is a learning machine. It absorbs language, tone, and emotion like code in a system. Every time you were told, "You can't," "You're not enough," or "That's not possible," your subconscious stored those lines as safety rules. These weren't meant to hold you back. They were meant to protect you. But protection easily becomes limitation when comfort replaces courage. To rewire your mind, you first have to see the code. Awareness is the debugging process. You start noticing patterns in how you think, what triggers your fears, and where your excuses hide. Every repeated belief leaves a digital fingerprint in your behavior. Once you trace it, you can begin rewriting the mental script that's been quietly dictating your potential. Most people try to escape their limits through motivation, but you can't outrun your programming. You can only upgrade it. Motivation gives you a push, but reprogramming gives you a new direction. The real transformation happens when you stop trying to fight your limits externally and start dissolving them internally, one belief at a time. The brain's default mode is efficiency. It loves the familiar. That's why breaking old mental patterns feels uncomfortable. The system resists new code because it's built to conserve energy. But every time you push through discomfort, you teach your brain that safety can exist outside the familiar. Growth begins where the system starts to adapt. You rewire your limits through repetition, not intensity. Change doesn't happen in one breakthrough moment. It happens in small, consistent acts of awareness. Every time you replace a self-defeating thought with a neutral or empowering one, you overwrite an old line of code. Consistency tells the brain, this is the new normal. Eventually, the mind forgets the old rules. To rewrite the mental code, you must change the language you speak to yourself. Words aren't just sounds, they're commands. The way you describe your life becomes the architecture your mind builds within. When you say, "I always fail," your brain searches for evidence to confirm it. But when you say, "I'm learning to improve," it looks for data to support growth. The code follows the command. Your subconscious doesn't understand "don't." If you tell yourself, "Don't be nervous," it still processes the word "nervous." That's why focusing on what you want, not what you fear, rewires the system faster. The brain obeys imagery and emotion more than logic. Direct it with clarity, and it will start reorganizing your inner world accordingly. The mind resists change not because it hates growth, but because it fears losing identity. Every limit you have is attached to a story. I'm not good with money. I'm bad at relationships. I can't stay consistent. When you challenge those stories, the ego panics. But when you prove through action that those stories are outdated, the brain updates its identity file. Your habits are your mental code in motion. The small routines you repeat daily, checking your phone, doubting yourself, avoiding discomfort, are all unconscious programs reinforcing your current limits. To change your life, you don't need to erase everything. You need to rewrite the code beneath those actions. The habit is the surface, the belief is the root. To reprogram effectively, combine logic with emotion. The brain changes faster when you feel the new belief, not just think it. Visualize yourself already acting with confidence, clarity, or power. Emotion gives new code strength. The more vividly you experience your desired reality, the more real it becomes in your neural network. The brain adapts to whatever it practices most. If you rehearse fear, fear becomes natural. If you rehearse calm, calm becomes instinct. That's why rewiring isn't a mental trick, it's training. You are teaching your mind what to expect from you. Eventually, it stops arguing and starts aligning. Sometimes, your limits aren't self-made, they're inherited. Generational beliefs, cultural norms, and collective fears can all live inside your mental code. You might be carrying emotional software written by people who never learned to question it. Awareness breaks that chain. Once you see that the fear isn't yours, you're free to delete it. The act of rewriting your mind begins with curiosity. Ask yourself why you believe what you believe. Don't fight your thoughts, analyze them. When you get curious about your limits, you detach from them. And the moment you detach, they start losing control. What you observe, you can reprogram. What you resist, you reinforce. The hardest part of mental rewiring isn't knowing what to change, it's staying consistent long enough for the system to update. Old code doesn't disappear instantly, it fades as new patterns take root. Patience isn't weakness, it's the requirement for deep transformation. The mind changes through stability, not speed. As you rewire your mental code, you'll notice internal resistance, doubt, procrastination, fatigue. That's the old system trying to survive. But instead of fighting it, observe it. Awareness turns resistance into feedback. Each struggle reveals the exact point in the system that's ready to evolve. When the new code starts running, the world feels different. You'll respond calmly to what once triggered you. You'll see opportunity where you used to see threat. That shift isn't luck, it's your new mental framework interpreting reality differently. The external world reflects the internal upgrade. Rewiring isn't about becoming someone new. It's about becoming the version of yourself buried under outdated code. You're not adding power, you're revealing it. The limits were never real. They were instructions you forgot to question. The moment you do, your capacity expands naturally. The system you live with now is just one version. Every time you learn, adapt, and challenge yourself, you rewrite the script that defines what's possible. You are the coder, the user, and the system all at once. The better you understand that relationship, the faster you evolve. When your mind is fully rewired, the word limit loses meaning. You stop asking if you can, you start asking how you will. The system no longer argues with your potential. It supports it. That's when life begins to feel effortless. Not because it's easy, but because your inner code finally matches your vision. And that's what real mastery feels like, precision without resistance. Thinking is supposed to create solutions, but most people use it to create pressure. The mind, when untrained, doesn't solve it, spirals. You think to prepare, but instead, you start predicting every possible failure. Thought becomes anxiety, planning becomes panic, and clarity gets buried under noise. The difference between stress and strategy isn't intelligence, it's direction. You must teach your thoughts to work for you, not against times you. A thought on its own is harmless. It's what you attach to it that creates weight. The problem isn't overthinking, it's unfocused thinking. Strategic minds think deeply too, but they think with structure. They know what they're solving, what outcome they want, and what matters right now. The moment you give thought a destination, it stops running in circles and starts building a map. The stressed mind lives in possibility. The strategic mind lives in process. One gets trapped in what if, the other focuses on what next. Stress exaggerates, strategy prioritizes. When you learn to separate planning from worrying, you start reclaiming your energy. You stop imagining obstacles and start identifying steps. Strategy turns fear into data. Your thoughts become stressful when you demand control over what can't be controlled. You try to manage outcomes instead of managing actions. But once you shift focus from the result to the process, stress loses oxygen. You stop trying to predict the future and start preparing for it. That simple shift from control to clarity rewires how your brain handles pressure. Strategy begins with understanding your brain's bias toward fear. The mind's first instinct is to protect, not progress. That's why it magnifies what could go wrong. To think strategically, you must override that reflex. Ask questions that redirect thought. What's the most efficient move? What's within my control? What does progress look like today? These questions replace panic with planning. The difference between a chaotic thinker and a strategic one is pattern recognition. Strategy isn't about overthinking, it's about identifying repetition. Every problem follows a pattern. Once you see it, you can predict it. Stress reacts blindly. Strategy anticipates calmly. Observation is your greatest weapon against overwhelm. Strategic thinking starts with slowing down. The mind under stress moves too fast to see clearly. But clarity doesn't come from speed, it comes from stillness. The best decisions are made in mental silence, not noise. When you learn to pause between thought and reaction, you create space for logic to breathe. That's where smart decisions are born. Most people use thought as emotional release, not design. They think to feel in control rather than to build solutions. That's why their ideas feel scattered. They're venting, not constructing. But when you shift your mental energy from expression to execution, everything changes. You stop analyzing life and start architecting it. Strategic thinking requires perspective, stepping back far enough to see the entire board. Stress zooms in on problems until they look massive. Strategy zooms out until it sees the system. From distance, patterns emerge, and priorities align. You stop treating every issue as urgent and start identifying which ones actually matter. The strategic mind doesn't suppress emotion, it organizes it. Emotion holds valuable data: what you value, what you fear, what you avoid. When you analyze emotion instead of drowning in it, you extract insight. Stress makes emotion your enemy. Strategy makes it your compass. You learn to read what your reactions reveal. Stress often disguises itself as responsibility. You think worrying more makes you care more. But responsibility without perspective just burns fuel. Strategy is efficient responsibility, knowing where to apply effort and where to release it. You can't carry everything. You must carry what moves you forward. Every thought carries potential energy. Stress releases it prematurely. Strategy converts it into movement. The more intentional your thinking, the more effective your action. Random thought drains. Structured thought compounds. That's how the same brain can feel exhausted one day and unstoppable the next. It's all in how you use it. A stressed mind seeks perfection. A strategic mind seeks progress. Stress tries to predict every outcome. Strategy adapts to each one. When you stop chasing flawless execution and start refining with feedback, you build momentum. Growth is iterative. Each step clarifies the next. You don't have to see the full plan to start moving intelligently. To turn thought into strategy, you must manage energy, not just logic. The mind under tension loses creativity. That's why breakthroughs often come when you step away during a walk, a shower, or silence. When you give your mind recovery time, it organizes itself naturally. Rest isn't escape, it's optimization. Your thoughts need hierarchy. Not every idea deserves equal attention. Strategy ranks importance. Stress treats everything as urgent. When everything matters, nothing does. The disciplined thinker organizes priorities before reacting. This structure allows you to move deliberately instead of emotionally. Thinking strategically requires practice, not genius. You build it by asking better questions, writing plans, and reflecting before reacting. Each time you approach problems with composure, you strengthen the neural pathway for control. Over time, strategy becomes instinct. Calm becomes your default mode of thinking. The most powerful minds aren't the ones that think more, they're the ones that think times less often but more accurately. Asterisk. Their decisions carry weight because they've removed noise from the process. Every choice comes from clarity, not chaos. Strategy is simply focused intelligence in motion. When you master strategy, even setbacks feel manageable. You stop viewing failure as final and start reading it as feedback. The system doesn't collapse under stress, it recalculates. The mind becomes like water, adaptable, steady, and directional. You no longer fear uncertainty because you've built a structure that thrives in it. Over time, stress becomes information. Every surge of pressure reveals where you still lack structure. Every emotional spike points to an area of unrefined process. Awareness turns stress from a threat into a teacher. That's how strategic thinkers evolve. Faster they learn from what others avoid. Your thoughts stop being battles and start becoming blueprints. The noise turns into clarity, the anxiety turns into awareness, and every challenge turns into design. You no longer waste energy reacting to life, you spend it constructing it. That's the power of turning thought into strategy. You stop surviving the storm and start steering it. Average doesn't come from lack of talent, it comes from repetition. Most people don't fail because they can't succeed. They fail because they keep running the same mental loops disguised as personality. The same excuses, the same distractions, the same reactions, all automated scripts that create the illusion of control. To break out of average, you don't need to add more. You need to delete what's been silently keeping you stuck. Every behavior you repeat without awareness becomes identity. You don't choose your habits choose you. The brain loves familiarity. It rewards comfort, even when comfort kills growth. Patterns aren't just physical, they're neurological. When you repeat a thought long enough, it becomes an automatic signal that guides emotion, decision, and behavior. Average thrives in automation. The first step to deleting old patterns is brutal honesty. You must be willing to look at your routines without justification. Where do you waste time? What conversations drain your focus? Which emotions replay daily like background noise? These are not coincidences, they are unconscious programs running your life. You can't delete what you refuse to acknowledge. Average is seductive because it feels safe. The same routine, the same reactions, the same comfort zones, all of it gives the illusion of stability. But that safety is rented, not owned. The cost is your potential. Every time you choose predictability over progress, the system reinforces the code. Stay small. You can't evolve while protecting your limitations. To delete a pattern, you have to starve it. Every habit runs on attention and repetition. The moment you stop feeding it energy, it begins to weaken. But in that gap, discomfort appears. The brain resists change not because it loves pain, but because it hates uncertainty. The urge to revert to old behavior is the system fighting for survival. That's when you push through. Breaking patterns requires replacement, not absence. You can't delete a behavior and leave emptiness behind. The brain demands new instructions. If you stop scrolling but don't replace it with reflection, it will find another distraction. You don't remove patterns, you rewrite them. The secret isn't to resist the old, it's to automate the new. The patterns that keep you average are often invisible. They hide inside your language, your tone, your reactions. I'll do it later. I'm not ready. It's just who I am. These phrases look harmless, but they're mental viruses. They give permission for stagnation. Once you become conscious of these scripts, you start hearing how often your mouth defends your own limitations. Most people want transformation without deletion. They want to rise without releasing what holds them down. But growth is subtraction before addition. The space you clear becomes the foundation for the new you. You can't install a new operating system while the old one is still running. Deletion is not loss, it's upgrade. Every environment reinforces certain patterns. If your surroundings reward laziness, you will mirror it. If your circle normalizes mediocrity, your ambition will shrink to fit. Deleting patterns sometimes means deleting attachments. Growth requires distance from people who benefit from your old version. You can't evolve in a room that loves your limits. Deleting average begins with disrupting comfort. You must get comfortable being mentally uncomfortable. Each time you choose discipline over distraction, you send a new message to your brain. I run the system now. Over time, the mind learns that effort is safety and laziness is threat. That's when growth becomes your new default. You must also challenge your daily automation. Change your route, your timing, your order, your reactions. Every time you break a small routine, you teach your brain flexibility. Rigidity keeps you stuck. Variety expands awareness. The more unpredictability you introduce intentionally, the less power automatic habits have over you. The most powerful deletion is emotional. You must stop rewarding drama and victimhood. The brain becomes addicted to emotional intensity, even if it's negative. That's why people repeat arguments and self-sabotage, not because they enjoy pain, but because it feels familiar. Calm feels foreign until it's practiced. Emotional discipline is the reset button. Deleting old patterns doesn't mean becoming robotic, it means becoming intentional. You decide what deserves repetition and what doesn't. You're no longer led by impulse, you're guided by awareness. Average minds wait for motivation. Mastered minds design new pathways. You can't rely on inspiration when structure guarantees change. Self-pity is the strongest average loop. It justifies inaction by convincing you that your situation is unique. But growth is universal. It doesn't care about your excuses. Every moment spent defending your limits is a moment stolen from expansion. Once you stop explaining your pain and start reprogramming it, progress becomes inevitable. The mind doesn't resist change, it resists loss of identity. Every deleted pattern feels like losing a part of yourself. But what's dying isn't you. It's the version that outlived its purpose. Letting go isn't failure, it's a graduation. You outgrow patterns the way a snake sheds skin, not because the old was bad, but because it can't stretch anymore. Deleting patterns requires observation more than effort. The moment you notice a trigger before it becomes reaction, the loop weakens. Each interruption adds distance between who you were and who you're becoming. That gap is awareness, and awareness dissolves automation. Once you see the pattern, it can no longer control you. The real upgrade comes when deletion becomes natural. You stop overthinking what to change because awareness becomes instinct. You catch mediocrity before it takes root. You stop negotiating with laziness and start recognizing it as system corruption. The mind becomes self-cleaning when clarity becomes habitual. Average dies the moment. Accountability replaces excuses. Once you accept that no one else is responsible for your programming, power returns to your hands. The world doesn't shape your limits, you do. Deleting patterns is not rebellion against life. It's realignment with potential. You take back authorship of your story. When you delete the patterns that keep you average, you free up bandwidth for greatness. Focus sharpens, energy stabilizes, confidence amplifies. You stop chasing temporary highs and start building lasting momentum. Average fades quietly, not because you fought it, but because you outgrew it. You'll realize you didn't need to reinvent yourself. You only needed to remove what wasn't you. The version buried beneath repetition, fear, and comfort was always capable. You just had to clear the mental clutter that muted your potential. When the old code is gone, excellence doesn't need effort. It becomes your natural operating state. In a world built to steal your attention, focus has become the rarest form of strength. Everyone wants success, but few can sit still long enough to create it. The mind today is overloaded with noise, endless choices, distractions, and digital chaos that fragment your thoughts into tiny, powerless pieces. Power doesn't come from doing more. It comes from directing energy without interruption. Focus isn't just attention, it's control. The human brain wasn't designed for constant input. Every notification, headline, or opinion hijacks your mental bandwidth. When your attention is divided, your potential is diluted. You can't build momentum when you keep starting over. The powerful don't have more time, they have more focus. It's not what they do occasionally that matters, but what they give their undivided attention to consistently. Focus is currency because it determines what grows. Whatever you focus on expands your problems, your goals, or your fears. Most people accidentally fund their distractions. They invest thought and energy into worry, comparison, and noise. The results they complain about are simply the outcomes of misplaced attention. Power begins when you start spending your focus with intention. Your mind is like a lens. It can either magnify chaos or sharpen clarity. The problem is never the lack of ability, it's the scattering of energy. You can't concentrate on progress if you're emotionally multitasking. Each thought competes for the same mental space, leaving no room for precision. Focus isn't about exclusion, it's about direction. You decide what deserves your energy. Distraction feels harmless because it hides behind convenience. Checking your phone, switching tasks, jumping between ideas, each moment seems small, but collectively they destroy flow. Focus demands friction. You must resist the easy to earn the effective. Every time you choose attention over impulse, you strengthen your mental muscles. That repetition is how discipline becomes effortless. Powerful people treat focus like an investment. They know every hour scattered is a loss. They structure their environment to protect clarity, removing noise, setting boundaries, saying no. They understand that time isn't the most valuable asset. Undivided attention is. What you give energy to becomes your life's architecture. Protect it like capital. Your focus follows your emotions. Whatever you feel strongest about pulls your mind there. That's why emotional regulation is a prerequisite for focus. If you're always reacting, you're never directing. The calm mind isn't just peaceful, it's productive. The less you chase distractions born from emotion, the more clarity you reclaim. Focus requires emotional neutrality. The modern world trains you to crave novelty, quick dopamine, instant results, endless scrolling. But novelty kills depth. True mastery demands boredom, tolerance, the ability to stay engaged when progress feels invisible. The ones who rise aren't the most talented. They're the most consistent when nothing exciting happens. Focus transforms repetition into refinement. Focus also filters perception. What you focus on becomes your reality. If you constantly look for problems, you'll find them everywhere. If you train your attention on opportunity, your brain rewires itself to see solutions faster. The external world doesn't change, your awareness does. Attention isn't just mental, it's creative. You're literally designing reality with it. To master focus, you must simplify. Complexity scatters attention. Clarity concentrates it. Most people don't need more motivation. They need fewer choices. Every unnecessary decision consumes focus points that could have fueled progress. Simplify your goals, your inputs, your routines. When your direction becomes singular, your mind becomes unstoppable. Focus is built through boundaries. You can't protect what you don't define. Saying yes to everything fractures commitment. Each new obligation divides your strength into thinner lines. Power doesn't come from endless access. It comes from selective availability. The fewer people and tasks that can reach you, the more control you hold over your attention. Silence sharpens focus. Noise dulls it. Your brain needs quiet to integrate, analyze, and create. In constant stimulation, you're processing, not thinking. Spend time in mental stillness, not as escape, but as recalibration. In silence, your thoughts settle like dust after chaos, revealing what truly matters. Focus is born in quiet, not in noise. Discipline is the guardian of focus. Without it, even the best intentions fade into distraction. Every time you choose consistency over convenience, you invest in mental stability. Discipline transforms attention into habit, and habit into identity. Eventually, focus stops feeling forced. It becomes the natural rhythm of your thinking. Focus requires sacrifice. You can't give everything your attention and expect mastery. You must decide what's worth neglecting. Greatness is built by subtraction, not addition. When you stop chasing everything, what's important finally has space to grow. Focus teaches you that saying no isn't loss, it's leverage. Energy and focus are inseparable. When your body is drained, your mind can't sustain attention. Nutrition, sleep, movement, they're all extensions of focus management. Power isn't just mental endurance, it's biological alignment. A sharp mind lives inside a cared-for body. The more you maintain your system, the longer you can hold precision. Your digital environment is a battlefield for attention. Algorithms are built to exploit curiosity and emotion. Every swipe, scroll, and click is designed to fragment your mind. You must become ruthless with your inputs. Curate what you consume. Information is food, and most of what you're fed is junk. A focused brain requires a clean diet. Focus also demands presence. You can't concentrate on the next move while your attention is stuck in the past or future. Presence converts time into depth. When you're fully here, even a minute of work holds more power than an hour of distraction. Focus doesn't add hours to your life, it multiplies the impact of each one. The people who master focus don't live faster, they live sharper. They move deliberately, think deeply, and create intentionally. Their success looks effortless because they've eliminated internal friction. They don't waste energy fighting distraction, they've built a system that prevents it. Focus isn't talent, it's engineering. When focus becomes instinct, time bends in your favor. You start achieving more with less effort because your energy moves in a single direction. Power flows where attention goes. That's not philosophy, that's neurology. Every second of deep focus rewires your brain toward dominance, while every distraction resets it toward mediocrity. Focus is freedom. It gives you control over what enters your mind, what grows in your life, and what defines your reality. The world may compete for your attention, but you decide who wins. Once you treat focus as sacred, you stop chasing power, because focus is power. Everything else is noise. Your brain isn't waiting for instructions, it's learning from your behavior every second. Every choice you make, every reaction you repeat, becomes a signal that tells your mind who you are. The brain doesn't argue with your habits, it studies them. If you procrastinate, it learns delay. If you overthink, it learns hesitation. The brain doesn't lead your life, it mirrors it. What you do consistently becomes what your brain believes is truth. Most people think their brain controls them, but in reality, they've trained it too. The subconscious is a perfect student. It records without judgment. It doesn't ask whether your behavior helps or harms, it just memorizes. Every time you react emotionally, give up early, or settle for less, Your brain writes that as normal. Over time, normal becomes identity. You don't just live habits, you live the lessons your brain has learned from you. This means your mind isn't your enemy, it's your reflection. It doesn't resist you out of defiance, but out of loyalty. If you've taught it fear, it will protect you from risk. If you've taught it doubt, it will filter out opportunity. The system is neutral, you're the programmer. The problem is never the brain, it's the outdated instructions you've forgotten to rewrite. Your brain learns fastest from repetition and emotion. That's why trauma imprints deeply and success fades quickly. Pain tends to carry stronger signals. But you can rewire this. If you associate action with confidence, discipline with reward, and calm with control, your brain starts learning new priorities. You don't have to fight the system, you just have to feed it better data. Everything you repeat is an affirmation not in words, but in patterns. Your brain doesn't care what you say, it watches what you do. If you say you want change but keep feeding old routines, it assumes you prefer stability over growth. The brain only upgrades when your actions become consistent enough to override comfort. Consistency, not intensity, teaches it who's in charge. Your environment accelerates the lessons your brain learns. The sounds, faces, and routines you surround yourself with create invisible feedback loops. Sit in chaos long enough, and your brain starts confusing noise for normalcy. Sit in calm, and it learns stillness as safety. You can't outthink your surroundings. You must recondition them to teach your mind a new baseline. The brain loves clarity. When you're indecisive, it freezes. When you're focused, it thrives. It doesn't need endless options, it needs direction. Give it one target, one task, one purpose, and it will begin optimizing your attention around it. Confusion isn't weakness, it's just a sign that your brain hasn't been given a clear map. You train your brain through repetition disguised as routine. Waking up early, staying calm under pressure, or speaking with intention. These aren't isolated acts of willpower. They're neural messages that shape identity. The more consistently you show discipline, the more automatic it becomes. What starts as effort turns into instinct. That's how mastery is built, not in motivation, but in memory. The brain's main goal is efficiency. It always chooses the path that saves the most energy. That's why change feels exhausting. At first, you're forcing the system to burn fuel on unfamiliar processes. But once a new pattern is repeated enough times, it becomes effortless. The discomfort fades, and what once felt forced becomes automatic. The brain learns that this new version of you is the real one. Your thoughts are training data. Every complaint strengthens negativity. Every focus on possibility reinforces optimism. Your mental attention decides what the brain prioritizes. It doesn't label thoughts as good or bad. It simply amplifies whatever you feed it most. You're either programming it for progress or anxiety. Every thought is a vote. Most people let their brain learn by accident. They drift through days reacting instead of directing, unaware that every reaction is another lesson stored. Awareness interrupts that process. The moment you observe your behavior, you regain authorship. You can stop automatic loops mid-pattern and rewrite them with conscious intention. That's how you shift from living unconsciously to living intelligently. The more aware you become, the more feedback you give your brain. Every correction you make in real time, catching a negative thought, adjusting posture, redirecting focus reinforces control. You're not fighting instinct, you're refining it. The brain learns fastest when it's challenged gently but repeatedly. Awareness is the most powerful teaching method you have. Emotions are also part of this learning system. If you reward your brain with panic every time you face pressure, it learns that discomfort equals danger. But if you meet pressure with composure, It learns that challenge equals opportunity. You're always conditioning a response, whether consciously or not. Calm isn't a gift, it's training. The language you use also educates your brain. Saying, "I can't" or "I'm bad at this" becomes an instruction it obeys. Every label you attach to yourself becomes part of the internal operating system. But when you replace "I can't" with "I'm learning," your brain opens new neural routes instead of closing them. Words are mental architecture. They build or block your pathways. You don't need to control every thought. You just need to lead the consistent ones. The brain listens more to patterns than to moments. If you make small, intentional corrections daily, you reshape your neural identity. A single choice doesn't change your life, but 100 repeated choices do. The brain follows momentum, not promises. The beauty of this system is that it's never permanent. No matter how deeply your old conditioning runs, your brain remains plastic, always adaptable. It can unlearn fear, reframe pain, and rewire identity. The only requirement is persistence. Every conscious repetition sends a signal stronger than the old one. Over time, the new program becomes default. When you realize your brain learns times you asterisk, accountability becomes freedom. You stop blaming emotion or habit and start recognizing how much power you hold. You can teach your mind resilience, focus, and calm the same way it once learned fear, distraction, and doubt. You are both the coder and the code. Mastery begins when you start observing what your brain is learning from you today. What are you reinforcing through your thoughts, your tone, your choices? Awareness makes invisible lessons visible. Once you see them, you can reshape them. And once you reshape them, the system upgrades itself automatically. In time, your brain becomes your most loyal ally, trained to anticipate your direction, mirror your confidence, and protect your peace. You no longer chase discipline or clarity. They live in you. The mind you once tried to control becomes an extension of your vision. That's what mastery really means. Not domination over the brain, but partnership with it. And one day, you'll look around and realize that your habits, emotions, and results all align effortlessly. Not because your brain finally followed you, but because it times became times you. It learned your focus, your standards, your calm. You didn't force change, you taught it. That's the quiet genius of evolution. The brain doesn't obey power, it learns it. Every victory starts in the mind, long before it happens in the world. The people who appear calm under pressure, confident in chaos, and unstoppable in adversity aren't born different. They've already fought the battle within. The outer game career, competition, achievement is just a reflection of inner stability. You can't win externally while losing internally. The mind is always the first battlefield, and mastery there defines everything that follows. The inner game is about control, not comfort. It's the ability to stay composed when emotion demands reaction, to think clearly when the noise gets loud, to lead your thoughts instead of being dragged by them. Most people try to fix the world around them without realizing that their internal chaos is the blueprint shaping it. When your inner state is grounded, no storm outside can destabilize you. You win the inner game by mastering awareness. Awareness lets you see your patterns before they play out, your fears before they sabotage you, and your ego before it hijacks clarity. The unaware mind fights shadows it created. The aware mind adjusts reality from within. Once you learn to observe rather than react, the game slows down, and that's when you start winning by design, not by luck. The mind is a mirror. If it's clouded, everything looks distorted. The moment you clean that mirror, you stop mistaking reflection for reality. You begin to realize that most problems weren't real, they were projections of internal imbalance. The outer world stops feeling personal because you understand. It's not against you, it's responding to you. Most people lose because they chase control outside while surrendering control inside. They try to manage other people, outcomes, and timing, yet can't manage their own thoughts. Power doesn't come from forcing outcomes. It comes from mastering your inner rhythm. The world bends more easily when your emotions don't. That's not luck, that's alignment. The inner game is built through repetition, not of effort, but of awareness. Every time you catch yourself reacting and choose silence instead, you're reinforcing strength. Each time you feel fear and still move forward, you're rewiring courage. Growth doesn't happen in grand gestures. It happens in invisible mental decisions no one sees but you. The first step to winning inside is learning emotional neutrality. Not everything deserves an emotional reaction. Energy is expensive, spend it with intention. The stronger your ability to observe without absorbing, the less control the world has over your peace. Detachment isn't indifference, it's strategy. You don't win every argument. You simply stop giving chaos a stage. Your ego is the greatest opponent in the inner game. It feeds on comparison, validation, and reaction. It keeps you chasing illusions of control while losing presence. The ego can't be destroyed, but it can be disciplined. You learn to recognize when it's speaking, the voice that demands approval, that fears being misunderstood. Once you see it, you stop confusing it for truth. Silence is a weapon in the inner game. It gives you the power to analyze while others react. In silence, your thoughts settle, and the next move becomes obvious. Noise makes decisions emotional. Quiet makes them precise. The one who can stay silent, longest in uncertainty, holds the highest level of control. Calm is intelligence made visible. Winning inside also means mastering patience. The mind addicted to speed rarely finds direction. Most failure comes from acting too soon, from impatience, disguised as ambition. When you understand timing, you stop forcing outcomes and start aligning with them. Patience turns frustration into strategy. Waiting is only weakness when it lacks purpose. The inner game rewards discipline over drama. The more emotional noise you remove, the clearer your intuition becomes. You start hearing your instincts instead of your fears. That internal quiet isn't emptiness, it's precision. The voice guiding you forward is always there. It's just drowned by overthinking. Stillness lets you hear it again. When you master your inner responses, you become unshakable. You stop needing ideal conditions to perform. The challenge no longer defines your strength, your mindset does. You begin to understand that calm isn't what happens when life gets easy, it's what makes life easier. The outer world no longer dictates how you feel, you dictate how you move through it. The outer game runs on reaction, the inner game runs on rhythm. When you control your rhythm, your focus, your breathing, your pace, you make chaos predictable. Most people crumble, not because life hit too hard, but because they never trained for impact. The inner game builds the mental armor that turns pressure into performance. Awareness gives you the upper hand in every encounter. When you know your triggers, you stop being manipulated. When you understand your emotions, you stop outsourcing your power. People who master themselves aren't immune to pressure, they're just fluent in it. They don't resist energy, they redirect it. That's why they seem untouchable. Winning the inner game requires surrendering perfection. The need to always be right, always be strong, always be in control, that's how the mind exhausts itself. Real control is fluid. It adapts, learns, recalibrates. The more you release the illusion of control, the more genuine power you gain. Balance is born from flexibility, not rigidity. Focus is your greatest weapon in the inner game. Wherever your attention goes, energy follows. If you focus on fear, you feed it. If you focus on opportunity, you expand it. Every mental redirection is a micro-win. The more you train your focus, the less power distraction has. Attention is how you command reality. The outer world loves reactions. They're predictable, profitable, and easy to manipulate. But the person who controls their inner state becomes unreadable. You stop being a product of circumstance and become the creator of your environment. When your calm can't be purchased or provoked, you've won the quietest and hardest battle there is. The inner game isn't a one-time victory, it's a lifelong practice. Every new level of success brings new pressure, new temptation, new distractions. The same principles still apply. Awareness, patience, and control. You don't stop training your mind once you win. You keep refining it, because the mind that stops evolving starts decaying. When you've won the inner game, results come faster, not because life gets easier, but because resistance fades. You're no longer fighting yourself. Energy that once went to self-doubt now fuels creation. Time feels slower, clarity feels sharper, and peace feels normal. That's not luck, that's self-mastery in motion. You realize the outer victories, the money, respect, success were just side effects. The real prize was internal freedom. You no longer need validation, approval, or proof. You move through life like a strategist, not a survivor. Because once you've won the inner game, the outer one never stood a chance. Winning in life isn't about luck, timing, or even talent. It's about understanding the machine running the show, your mind. Once you learn how to direct your thoughts, manage your focus, and rewire your patterns, the game changes. You stop reacting to life like a passenger and start steering it like an engineer. Every emotion, habit, and decision becomes a tool instead of a trap. That's what mental power really looks like: quiet, deliberate, and unstoppable. Reprogramming your brain doesn't mean becoming someone else. It means uninstalling everything that was never you. All the doubts, the fears, the second-guessing, they're not truth. They're outdated scripts written by repetition. Once you erase those codes and install awareness, clarity, and intention, your entire system starts operating at a higher frequency. You begin to feel lighter, sharper, and more in control, not because the world got easier, but because your mind finally stopped working against you. The truth is, success has always been psychological. The people who rise aren't necessarily smarter. They're just more conscious of how they think. They don't wait for motivation, they create mental momentum. They don't chase opportunity, they train their brain to recognize it. When you master your mental programming, you stop surviving in the system and start rewriting it from within. And this is the real victory, when your thoughts become allies, not enemies. When discipline feels natural, focus feels effortless, and success feels inevitable. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. You've built a mind that no longer sabotages your potential, it amplifies it. Remember, your brain learns whatever you teach it. Every thought is a line of code. Every choice is a command. Write carefully, program intentionally. Because once you hack your brain, you stop playing life by its rules and start winning by your own.